Hello, welcome to another episode of How to Hyvä. Hey, today Vinai and I want to share a little bit on a recent update that we released for Hyvä Themes, which is an extension on Alpine.js called x-defer, which solves a great issue that we were seeing with Core Web Vital or Google Performance scores, being interaction to next paint, which is a new metric that Google introduced to measure how long it takes from loading a page until the page becomes interactive. And you used to have time to interactive as a measurement for that, but now they actually measure the time until there's a repaint triggered in the browser, which is longer. Over 50% of our customers, which is 3,000 stores, were passing Core Web Vitals before this update, and we dropped by 9%. So we went from, 52 of our customers, 52% were passing Core Web Vitals, which is really high as an industry standard for e-commerce stores. We see headless and composable front-end scoring, well, less than 1% of the customers are passing Core Web Vitals. So we were hurt by this new metric, and we saw that even our own demo store was performing a lot worse than it used to. And it made us sit down and reconsider the way that we're initializing components on pages. And we found a clever way to reduce that initial load on the page when Alpine is initialized. And we thought it would be good to show the issue, the use case, and how we resolved it. And I think it will be useful for the bigger Alpine community in case you're dealing with performance issues as well. So let's dive in and show a little bit what we're talking about. So we have two demo stores. One is demoing one of our products, a checkout product. The other is a standard demo site. It's demo.hyvä.io. So that's the one on the right. It's as you can see, it's pretty quick, and it's not a single page application. It's multi-page application built on the monolith Magento. So we really proud of the performance that we managed to build on a template-based front end. And we've always scored 99, 100 points in Lighthouse. And on the left, you can see before we introduced our update with x-defer, that we dropped, 10 points on the homepage. And if we look at other pages, I have a couple of profiles ready here. For a product listing page, we're still scoring 94 before the update. But if we show a lot more products, this is a profile when showing, I think, 34 products or no, even 36
that's the big
products.
One. Yeah, that's a big one, 36, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a listing that shows 36 products, and then these are configurable products. That means that they have swatch options and a lot more interactive components there. I can show that. So we have swatches that switch the image and update the price if needed. And the more products that you have on a page, these are all Alpine.js components that need to be initialized. So we need to calculate what options are available. So if a product is out of stock, it knows that it should cross out a certain option when you select the size. And all that logic is baked in here, including add to cart and wish list and compare. So the more this page grows, the more products you want to display, the more the page initialization needs to calculate or load in all of the JavaScript and all of those components. And that all counts into the interaction to next paint metric. So one of our heavier page types is a bundle product that was also hurt slightly. But especially on products that have heavier calculations and heavier Alpine components, we saw the score go down. So on the homepage, the sliders, that also hurt the score slightly. So we took some time to profile this demo side and see where this delay or where the time to interaction score was coming from. And you can see in Lighthouse results that one of the issues, if we check here, you can see the main thread work and long main thread and JavaScript execution time. Those are the metrics that influence the interaction to next page mostly. And you can see that Alpine is taking 500 milliseconds here to initialize. Overall script evaluation is almost a second. So yeah, that all really counts into that score. And I think if we look at the example with many products that I just showed, that was this one with the 36 products, you will see the execution time actually becoming a critical metric. You can see the red triangle. Script evaluation goes up to 1.7 seconds. This is on mobile on a slow device, so that's what Google measures. But then 1.7 seconds really is kind of slow. And you can see that most of the time is coming from Alpine. And it's not just the Alpine library, but the time that the Alpine library is busy building our page. So that depends on the components that we have on that page. You can see that same metric here is only 900 milliseconds, but that's before the update that we made. If you look at the right side, which is the updated version, and you look at the script execution time, it's only 270 milliseconds that is working on Alpine.js. So let's first dive into how we analyze these issues. Google Chrome is really useful on that. If you open the inspector and go to mobile view, make sure you select the low-end mobile. So that means it toggles performance to slow 3G connection, and it adds 6-time CPU slowdown. Now, I'm using a really modern Apple MacBook with an M2 processor, so it's hard to simulate performance locally, because Lighthouse here in the browser is running from my local machine, and that naturally gives it a way higher score than when you're measuring it through PageSpeed. And that's kind of the issue with local profiling in Lighthouse. You can get a 100 score if you work on a modern machine, but then you push it live and you start testing in online PageSpeed, and then the scores immediately drop. So it's best, if you can, to always make sure you have the same baseline for testing, use the same browser and the same settings, because it can differ a lot. So don't just trust blindly on the scores that you get on Lighthouse locally. If we slow down the CPU by 6 times and slow down 3G connection, and we run a profile here, you can see that Chrome is quite useful here in showing where you have slow tasks on the page. So whenever you see the red triangle here, it indicates that this is a long task that you shouldn't optimize or break down into smaller functions, or maybe defer it, or try to reduce that load. And while investigating here, if you go in the code tree stack, and you see that the biggest action on this page, or the longest load time, is coming from microtasks, which is what Alpine runs after it's finished initializing itself. It starts initializing Alpine components on a page, and it's a bunch of anonymous and minified methods. So it's a bit trickier to debug this, but once you narrow down and you dig deep enough, you start to find those functions and methods that you defined yourself. So calc page size, you can see this is coming from a source on the page. It's not coming from the Alpine library. So you can see this is the initiator of one of the slow methods. And you can click on this, which jumps to the source file of this page. And you can see that this is a slider component that we've written, and that's being initialized on page initialization, and it calculates Here, for example, how many dots it should show, and it resizes automatically. So it updates. This is all written with Alpine.js, and especially when swatches are involved, it's the same as you saw on the product page, the product listing page. These components have a fair amount of calculation built into them. And you can see that if you dig deeper here, you can see the swatches. We have an intercept method there that initializes when you scroll down. It looks for the attribute options that should be enabled or disabled. And those really stack up the more calls that you have to these components, and especially because it's all nested Alpine components with the add to cart and the wish list and everything. Just one product item here contains a fair amount of calculation, and if you have a slider that contains 10 products, that means 10 times the calculation. So then you end up with quite a big amount of calculation. And we started debugging to see, like, if we would delay the loading of these components, or if there were any tricks that we could pull here. Now, a lot of our competitors are solving this issue, because this is an issue that you always have with e-commerce, with interactive pages with many components on them. Most competitors are entirely deferring the load of these sliders, so they load them in through GraphQL, and then only if you scroll down, all of the data is being loaded. So that's not a great user experience, because it usually makes for layout shifts. Data is being loaded later, so things jump around when you scroll down, and it's a delay in the page load. And I think it's pretty bad for SEO, because if it's not rendered initially, that means that all of the product data and the links and all of that is not accessible to Google when they index the page. What is nice about how we built Hyvä is that Alpine.js is it's the source around the page that adds interactivity. So it's really to enrich a page, not to build the page. So if you disable JavaScript and you load a Hyvä page, you'll hardly see any difference, because everything is progressively enhanced. So these sliders are still showing. You just don't see the thumbnails and the slider, but it's a scrollable container. So the layout is very stable compared to when you enable JavaScript. And that means that if we would delay the initialization of these components, you still have the interactivity once you scroll down, but the layout stays stable, and Google can still index all of these data. So I think it's really an advantage against lazy loading these components. Now, when we started looking at a solution for this, so when we disabled some of these components, we first started to disable a couple of Alpine components, and we saw that it actually resolved the INP issue and the time to interactivity. So we knew that this was really the point where we needed to tackle the issue and to get back to 99, 100 points in Lighthouse. So what we thought of was, what if we defer Alpine components until a certain action is triggered? So that could be interactivity, just scrolling on a page, or x-intersect, which we already built into Hyvä, or basically any event. So what we found out is that Alpine already has a x-ignore method that makes Alpine ignore any components on a page, on page load, and that allows us to make sure that components are not rendered until we decide it needs to be rendered. So what we did with the Alpine xdefer plugin, I can show the source code that we first wrote here. What we do is, first we loop through a couple of components to clarify, this is a snippet that we use as a drop-in on a live website to test and to see how we can improve scores, which would work on any website with a little bit of authentication. But this nicely shows how x-defer is built up. You can see it's just 85 lines of code, and it completely resolves the issues that we just looked at. So we've defined a couple of selectors here on the page that allows us to loop through those components and then add x-defer to these components. Then when Alpine initializes, we run a method that adds x-ignore. Let me see where.
It's line 90. I can't really see. It's line 60. Line 60.
Yeah. So okay. So this is the initialization. Is when we run the component. So for each component where we set x-defer on page load, we add x-ignore. Exactly, here it is, and then we set a defer action. And defer is the value of x-defer. So you can see it from the documentation. You can set intersect, interact, idle, or any event prefix. So that can be any custom event. And per trigger, you can see we have a different promise that will be resolved either when the page is initialized or when the page is interacted with. So that's on touch or scroll or hover, or when you press a key. So that's basically any interactivity. So that could be really useful if you have, for example, a chat integration that you initialize with Alpine.js. You could defer loading that component until you interact with the page. And x-intersect is particularly handy if you have components like the sliders that we just looked at, that you only need to initialize once you scroll down on the page. So we came up with this, and I need to give credits to you, Vinai, for writing the actual implementation of this plugin.
The idea is all yours, so that's.
Well, it took only hours after I pitched the idea until you gave me this piece of code to play with. So that really helped in quickly continuing my quest in optimizing the performance of a demo site. And what was cool that we could actually just throw this into a live store before we released anything. I could just throw it onto our checkout demo site through the CMS and then test what effect it had. So I could just play around with these selectors and just see, like for a product slider, if we use intersect there. I added that and then ran it against page speed, and then I saw the improvement, so I could tweak a little bit and see, like, if I started adding more components, what the effect was. And it turned out that it really only makes sense to use x-defer when the Alpine component is quite CPU intensive. So if you have, or when it needs to run through a lot of DOM nodes or make calculations and then do a repaint in the browser, those are particularly expensive and delay the interaction to next page. So we advise against just optimizing x-deferring all of the components on the page. You can actually just run x-data as a selector and run intersect on it and just defer everything. But then we saw that this script actually takes so long to loop through all those Alpine components that it worked against the optimization. So it's really a balancing game, and really trying to identify using profiling like this to identify where the slow components are, which need to be optimized. And see what influence it has on performance, and try not to add too many components to the x-defer. And well, we can show if we add this exact snippet to the checkout demo site. We have a snippet here ready. that we add through a static block to a website. So if you have if you have any live Magento store, be it on Luma or be it on Hyvä, you could, well, Luma that would make sense because it doesn't use Alpine. If you were using Alpine on the Luma store, you could. But any store where you're using Alpine and you have a heavy component, you could add this exact snippet to a CMS block and then add it to all of your pages. So it's enabled now. It will automatically refresh the cache of this page, so it should be working now immediately. Of course, I have CPU slowdown set now, so it's gonna be slow. If we, well, I can rerun the profile. You will see the difference. Performance. Let me check here. So if I rerun it now. In the meantime, we can show Checo demo. You will see if I search this page for xdefer. Did it not load already? Let's see, maybe I do need to clear the cache. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now it's added. So if I reload the page and I search for xdefer, you can see it set the xdefer on 88 components based on the selector that we added. So that's mostly coming from the slider and the product info, the swatches that are loaded there. And if I run the profiler now, so here you didn't see the improvement yet. Let's do that again. And a neat way to search for components, of course, you should install the Alpine.js debugging tool. I don't have it available here in incognito mode, but that's a way to find which Alpine components are available on a page, but you could also just look for, this is what I usually do. I search in the console for any Xdata component that just returns all of the components set on the page, and that allows you to click through them and see where you might have candidates that could be optimized to look for selectors to add to the xdefer script. Can we compare? Yeah, we can. So here we have 210 milliseconds. Can you actually see? It's a small difference, but it's hard to compare on a Mac that's this fast. It's important to see if we get the total blocking time down in Lighthouse, which is a different, bit of a different metric because it's a slower device. So we're just looking at 400 milliseconds. Went up to 97 and 200 milliseconds blocking time. And I think it can do even faster. If we go back and look at all the results that we had here for the different pages, it's especially interesting to see what the page with 36 products, what the effect is there. So this is one of the heaviest pages that you can have in Hyvä with a lot of products with swatches. As you could see before, the score was only 77 points. So let's analyze that again. And the cool thing is that you lose absolutely no features. Everything pretty much works as it did before. You might have a small, depending on the logic that you have on a page, you might have race conditions. If you're waiting for a certain event on the page to be loaded, you might want to re-trigger that event. So with Hyvä, we have the section loaded, customer section loaded event to see if something, for example, is added to the cart. You might want to re-trigger that event. That's also documented here. You can see we dispatch the customer section data. Because otherwise you might not have the data available. Otherwise, pretty much anything we tested still works out of the box, and you get this huge performance gain as a bonus. And you can see that this is pretty much the slowest page that we have on the demo site, and it went up to 95 points. This one was already at 94 previously, but it should have improved quite a bit. This is a product page that was already at 96. So I think, what's cool is that this script is actually pre-release before we updated the theme to actually include x-defer by default. So we added it in Hyvä theme 1.3.7. So if you're not updating to that version yet, you can just take this snippet and paste it in the CMS of your live site or implement it into your custom theme. Otherwise, you can update the theme to 1.3.7, and then we actually already have these selectors set by default. So if you update, you get this new admin configuration screen that allows you to set any custom selector and set what defer action it should trigger on. So
quick note. Yeah, I may interject. That's actually from the theme module. So you don't even have to update the theme itself, just the theme module, and that is added in automatically, which makes it a benefit even without going through the work of updating a custom theme. It's like a drop-in improvement, right? Because we don't make backward incompatible changes in the default, in the theme module. Sorry, now I'm done. Back to you.
Yeah. No. It's a good comment. And you even went as far as implementing this back to the previous release line with Alpine v2. So, right?
Yeah, you can install, you can upgrade the theme module to the latest version, 1.3.7, and the xdefer and xignore are backported. So if you have a theme that's still using Alpine version 2, that would be the Hyvä theme release line 1.1, right? Those have the older versions of Tailwind and Alpine. It'll still work with those. Yeah,
so we're still supporting Alpine v2, even though we haven't had it in the newer product releases since I don't know, over a year or longer. So it's really easy to get started working with this, either through a snippet or through custom defining selectors here on the live website, depending on, of course, if you made customizations to your theme and these selectors have changed, you can customize them. And in the update of the theme itself, we already implemented xdefer on all of these components actually. So you don't need to have them set in the admin anymore. So you can use this only for optimizing components on a live website actually, or through the admin. But it can also it's more efficient to do it through template files actually, and just adding xdefer, because then you don't need this loop through components. So JavaScript doesn't need to go and change attributes on components. It's done on page render. So yeah, I think that's all about Xdefer. I think it's really helpful. We've seen a couple of customers already inventing other smart tricks with template wrappers, which also works, but has the disadvantage that Google can't index any of that content, because anything within a template container only renders when you scroll down. And I think this is a even neater solution and very easy and quick to implement for any Hyvä customer. So that's one of our big performance improvements for the 1.3.7 release. And we actually have another update, which is the experimental feature. I can show that. Where did I leave the configuration screen that I just had? What's the experimental feature called again? The prediction.
Dang it, now that you're saying it.
Speculation, yeah, speculation rules.
Speculation rules, right.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So we have another update which adds experimental feature of speculation rules, which works with the hover intent and preloads pages before you click on them. And we'll see you in the next video on that topic, because that's also something that really helps with core web vitals scores, and it's extremely easy to implement on any store, even without using Hyvä.
And
okay,
it's, I mean, the user experience is really good, because clicking the site's already pre-rendered. It just displays really instant. It's amazing. So I really love it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. See you in the next video.
See you in the next video about speculation rules. Thank you.